Good afternoon, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and scholars joining us from all over the world. Welcome to ŠumArt, the dynamic international platform dedicated to fostering dialogue, creativity, and cultural exchange within the academic and artistic communities. It is a privilege to host you today for a session that promises to be both enlightening and intellectually stimulating. We need to underscore that the Ministry of Culture of Republic of Serbia supports ŠumArt Talks, which is an integral component of International Interdisciplinary Forum. At ŠumArt Talks, we are committed to the transformative power of scholarly conversation in unveiling the diverse narratives and perspectives that shapes our global cultural and artistic landscapes. Our mission is to facilitate a closer engagement with the minds of leading artists, cultural icons, and intellectuals, offering profound insight into their professional journeys, creative processes, and the conceptual frameworks that underpin their work. Today, we are honored to present two distinguished scholars, Princess Alia Al-Senussi, PhD, and Lina Kattan, PhD. They will engage in a thoughtful discussion centered on the Dr. Alia Al-Senussi latest publication, Art in Saudi Arabia, A New Creative Economy. This book explores the transformative dynamic and growth within the Saudi Arabia's cultural sector, offering in-depth analysis of the kingdom's burgeoning creative economy and innovative developments taking place in the region. Let me introduce Princess Alia Al-Senussi. Princess Al-Senussi, PhD, is globally renowned member of the contemporary art world with a focus on cultural strategy and patronage system. She is an active cultural strategist, writer, patron, public speaker, and academic recognized for her deep knowledge of the global art world and its system and members. Considered one of the foremost figures in the contemporary art of her generation, Dr. Al-Senussi has spent her entire career in the global art world. She has served as Art Basel's UK and MENA representative from all over a decade, and it's also currently senior advisor, international outreach for Art Basel. In 2019, she was appointed senior advisor to the Ministry of Culture, Saudi Arabia, where she focuses on developing international partnerships, was working on a variety of projects across the ministries, commissions, and the Reich Biennale Foundation. Dr. Al-Senussi is a visiting lecturer on Brown University's Watson Institute, working primarily with the Middle East Studies program. She's currently the founding chairperson of the K11 International Council, a member of the Tate Modern Advisory Council London, a board of trustees of the ICA London, the Strategic Advisory Panel of the Delphina Foundation London, the Board of Trustees of the Showroom London, the Board of Trustees of Fantasia Elisa Sandauri Foundation UK, Egypt, Italy, the Board of Governors Island College, Switzerland, as well as a member of the Term Advisory Board, Germany, and UCCA Contemporary Cycle, China. Dr. Al-Senussi has recently been appointed founding global co-chair of the LACMA Ambassadors Board. She continues to serve as a founding member of the Tate Acquisition Committee for the Middle East and North Africa, the board of 154, the African Art Fair, and the Middle East Cycle of Guggenheim, the Middle East Studies Advisory Committee, Brown University, the Serpentine Future Contemporaries and founding committee member, as well as the founding member of the board of patrons of Art Dubai, having played an integral role of the founding of the fair. Dr. Al-Senussi is also a member of the British Committee for the Acquisition of the Middle East Art. Dr. Alia Al-Senussi has a PhD in politics from SOAS, London, examining the nexus of power and cultural patronage, featuring Saudi Arabia as a case study. She graduated magna cum laude in international relations honor and Middle East Studies from Brown University and holds MA in Politics Science and from Brown's and MCS in Law, Anthropology and Society from the London School of Economics. Princess Al-Senussi, you're very welcome to a ŠumArt meeting today, and we are deeply honored to have you here. Thank you. Let us introduce Dr. Lina Kattan, our distinguished speaker. She's a highly accomplished individual with a passion for art and a deep commitment for academia. She holds a PhD in visual and performing arts from Texas Tech University, where she also obtained a minor in women's studies, adding to her experience in this area. Dr. Kattan's academic journey is marked by exceptional achievement. She graduated with excellence from the doctoral program, earning a GPA of 3.89 out of 4. Prior of that, she earned a master's degree in Islamic arts from the King Abdulaziz University, where she was awarded for achieving the highest GPA in a graduate school. She also holds a bachelor's degree in Islamic arts education from the same university, graduating as a valedictorian of her class. In her professional career, Dr. Kattan has held various influential positions. She currently serves as the chair of the Drawing and Art Department at the College of Art and Design, University of Jeddah. Prior to this, she was an associate professor at the same institution and also had the position of head of the Drawing and Art Accreditation Committee, where she worked on the developing of curriculum and launching a new academic programs. Dr. Kattan's area of expertise are extensive and diverse. She specializes in applied research, art copyrights, and intellectual property, aesthetics of modernism and postmodernism, world civilization history, contemporary art trends, and new media arts. Her research interests particularly focus on contemporary Islamic art, both locally and globally, as well as women's studies and the representation of women in media and the art. Throughout her career, Dr. Kattan has made significant contribution to the field through her extensive publication history. She has authored numerous articles in prestigious journals covering topics such as the representation of women in Orientalist paintings, concept of self-body image in contemporary feminist art, and the aesthetics of iconography and iconology in contemporary art. Additionally, she has presented her work in various international conferences and delivered numerous public lectures and panels discussions on diverse art-related subjects. Dr. Kattan dedicated her field, and her passion for art are evident in her accomplishments. She's a true asset to the academic and art community, and her experience and insight have greatly contributed to the understanding and appreciation of art, particularly in the context of the Middle East and women's studies. It is my greatest pleasure to have these prominent ladies here with us today. And now I'm giving Dr. Kattan the microphone and to start the conversation with, yes, you have a problem with microphone. Okay. Okay.
You are unmuted now.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks. Sorry, I was saying I wasn't allowed to unmute. So hi, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I'm so honored to be here with Dr. Lina Kattan, who, has an incredible, kind of academic history and continues to do such important research. And it took Yelena to bring us together. I can't believe in all of our parallel academic Saudi art lives, we've never met. So this is kind of, I think, the whole point of the art world and, of these encounters.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you all. I'm thanking the audience also for joining us today and welcoming this and be a part of this stimulating online discussion about the exciting developments in Saudi Arabia art scene. First of all, I'm so delighted and honored to be a part of this kind of talk, and so honored to meet you finally. Princess Alia is, for me, I think she's a champion in the Middle East art scene, actually, and she's a key player in the development and registering the historical events and aspects of Saudi Arabia art scene. So I think I'm going to introduce this subject for the audience in a small bitty paragraph that I prepared, and then we're going to start to jump in with the questions and discussion. And for the audience, I'm not sure about we're going to try to limit our conversation for about 45 to 50 minutes, and then we're going to open the door for Q&A from the audience to jump in and with all of their questions. So the contemporary art scene in Saudi Arabia is experiencing a remarkable transformation. Once the story of Saudi Arabia contemporary art scene is a one of growth, ambition, and inclusivity, with the continued government support and growing international presence, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is poised to become a major force in the global art scene. This flourishing scene offers a unique opportunity to witness the confluence of tradition and modernity at the same time, where established artistic heritage blends seamlessly with this bold contemporary art voices. So in your experience, Princess Alia, and from the experience of researching and, mingling throughout the art scene in Saudi Arabia personally, what are some of the biggest shifts, in your opinion, that's happening in the contemporary art scene in Saudi Arabia recently?
Well, I think it's really interesting. I love your phrasing and your paragraph. I want you to send that to me because I'm gonna use it hard. But I think this idea of the confluence of tradition and modernity is, really that's this moment right now. And what I always try to really drive home. Of course, very well that there is a history of contemporary art in the kingdom and of course, in the Middle East in general, but so often people, thought, oh, there's no art scene in Saudi. There's no, exactly, art that's happening. And of course, we saw with the huge shift with Edge of Arabia in the early 2000s. But even before that, you had artists that were working in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, who had their own microcosms. And of course, there was no government support. There was no Ministry of Culture, really. There wasn't, of course, like the RCU that we see now with Al-Hada, the Royal Commission of Al-Hada, or, any of these kind of government support agencies then. But now we see this, huge shift in a focus in Vision 2030. If somebody kind of reads through the document there, it's very rich in its description of culture being at the heart of a new vision for the kingdom. And, so right now, I would say there's a big push, a big emphasis by the government, of course, on art and the art scene. But what one must always remember is that there are artists who have been working and kind of contributing to the cultural life of the kingdom, for kind of, many decades. And they are now being brought into a more, let's say, official fold, but that they existed always. I think that's always what I try to remember and kind of drive home to people who don't know the history Saudi art history.
Yeah, many times when I read about about writers or scholars who write about the art scene, especially in Saudi Arabia, I don't know, but this is my personal opinion, and this is what I kind of noticed about these kind of writings or even the expressions about the art scene in Saudi Arabia, that they're kind of imagining that this is kind of inclusive to this specific society, comparing to other societies in the Gulf area or the Arabian kind of countries. What do you think from your research? Because I know that you kind of dug deep down in this kind of society with especially in the art scene. What kind of in your opinion that it's kind of that differentiates the art scene and the idea of maybe the global kind of view of the art scene in Saudi Arabia comparing to other kind of societies in the Gulf or Arabian countries? So why this is kind of a specific kind of notice or kind of
I think really for me, what I always say is what defines Saudi and Saudi culture is that there are artists, and it's a matter, of course, that it's a larger population than its neighbors. Saudi is, of course, kind of many, many times bigger than most of the other countries in the GCC. But it's not just about population size. It's also about, how that population, interacted with artists historically. And, I kind of have said this story many times, so I'm sorry to our listeners who are here or some who have heard me say this before who will be watching this recording. But one of the, kind of crazy remarks I used to receive, less so now because people are more aware, but it used to be like, oh, well, Saudi, it's like such a new country. There's no art there. There's no culture there. And you're like, new country. Okay, yes, maybe like if you're looking at like a UN, list when countries were, achieved statehood, maybe, but not even. These are civilizations, that we're talking like Petra, level. This Al-Ala was the second city in the trade route to Petra. And that's, millennia ago. And then, now, of course, this drive, which I say really chapeau to the government for the archaeological sites, really not my world so much, but I enjoy reading the articles and reading about these discoveries. But of course that, if you grow up and have that interaction with, seeing hieroglyphs on the petroglyphs, I guess, like on the stone carvings, that processes in your brain. You are exposed to that as a child, and then you think, oh, well, somebody made that. Maybe I can make something. Maybe I can do something. It inspires you for your business, for, whatever it is that you're doing and making in your life. And that's the idea of also the creative economy, is that we don't all have to be artists. I am not at all. I'm surrounded by fabulous art. And I have, a wonderful young Kuwaiti artist who's now going to Saudi to do a residency at the Beit Shuaib, the other residency in Jeddah. And she's so fascinated. Her name's Latifa Al-Ajlan, fascinated by what's happening in Saudi and thinks it's so incredible and wants to go and learn and be inspired by ancient sites also, So I think that's what really, to me, distinguishes Saudi, is that there is a connection to history and a historical context. But of course, like all the world, we all evolve and move and kind of move into the contemporary, but thinking about the context of where we are, what we've been exposed to, our histories. I think that's very important.
Yeah, do you think, because I know that you've been all around the world and you've seen the art, world and markets all over the place. So do you think that because Saudi Arabia has a very rich cultural heritage especially in the idea of the traditional arts and handicrafts. So do you think that because they're kind of, relating it to the idea of the European example of art that they kind of, compare to the art scene in Saudi Arabia, because they're comparing, I guess, beside the cultural heritage with the traditional arts and the extensive kind of, history of Islamic art. So this is kind of, and the idea of our culture that it's integrated or kind of, rely more on the traditional arts and what the so-called the decorative arts. So because the idea of the European example of putting art is not kind of, it's new to our culture, and they're trying to catch up with it. So do you think this is the main or kind of, the core concept about art in Saudi Arabia, and there we are described as being an emerged country?
So I think these are like tensions that are explored in many different contexts. So, you look, for example, this year, the Venice Biennale, which had mixed reviews by certain people. I personally thought that it was a much needed conversation, that we still need to have these conversations about historical context, and of course we want to focus on the contemporary, because in a way that's our responsibility. My responsibility as being a member of the, kind of art world ecosystem, and contemporary art world is making sure that contemporary artists are celebrated. They can make a living, they can, pay their rent and eat and make and do. But at the same time, looking at the artists who have come in the generations before us, who have been overlooked because they're brown or a woman or, in whatever way marginalized in society. And so we're not seen. So I think that in Saudi, there, of course, is going to be a tension, and there is an inherent tension between tradition, traditional crafts, and modernity. But you see artists who are trying to bring those conversations together. So like the natural example is a Dana Hawatani, who, did her undergraduate degree in Central St. Martin's, in a very contemporary practice, with a very contemporary practice. But then after her graduation as an undergrad, she then did a series of specializations. I think in Arabic you say the ikama, and did the traditional illumination course with like a master in Turkey. Did traditional Islamic kind of study of Islamic geometry. So she's able to bring those two conversations together. And I think then you also see artists who work in very traditional settings and traditional ways. I don't interact so much with that world, but of course, I really appreciate the incredible artisans you see in Morocco. I mean, you see that the king of Morocco really focuses on these incredible artisans who make the mosaics and all the fountains and like these beautiful buildings and interpretations from a modern life, but very, very traditional. And then you have artists like Hassan Hajjaj, who's the Andy Warhol of the Middle East, right? So, I think, there's definitely space for both. And I am not somebody who's such an expert on the more traditional or historical, but I think it's really important that we have that.
Yeah, and this is kind of, gonna enrich the, and I think it's only possible now with the contemporary art scene, because it's, I think it's very open and wide, and can encapsulate or kind of, any kind of, art practice that could be emerged to the surface. So from this kind of point, let's go to the Diraya Binali. And I'd like to, for you to elaborate more and kind of, share some of your experiences during this kind of event, and kind of, elaborate more on the fact of the role of the art institutions, and, to kind of promote the art scene and artists to be in the global scene.
So, I'm a big believer in the gallery system, for example. So I think that, galleries provide this incredible platform to artists because they allow artists to just make and do, and a gallery can then take care of the messier aspects of that, and also help create those connections to curators, to institutions, to the international ecosystem. And right now in Saudi, you really have kind of only 2 galleries. And unfortunately, like my kind of one big thing is that whenever I, do one of these talks, it's like, we need more collectors, because you need collectors to sustain a gallery and to sustain artist careers. And so really what's happened with the Biennale is that the Biennale acts as this kind of overarching institution that really provides something that, has been missing in the Saudi ecosystem. And that it is, of course, a Biennale at the end of the day, which is, an exhibition, but it's actually much more than that. It's much more than just the 3 months that you have the contemporary, or the 3 months that you have the Islamic. It's really about bringing together, figures from the international art world, but also giving a space for excellent contemporary art and historical art, especially in the context of the Islamic, to be shown to a local population that's just drinking it in. You go and you see the way people, in many cases, this is not just speaking to the elite. This is like very much about speaking to the whole of Saudi society. It's free and open to the public, no admission charge. And it's a learning space. There's like really educational, really in-depth texts on the walls, of course, in Arabic and English. And it's a learning platform, for the local population, as well as then for the international population, which I work, very heavily on, of making sure we have, the great and the good of the international art world coming in and learning about what's happening in Saudi, but also just, artists. It's not just focusing on just Saudi artists, or, just big flashy Western artists. It's about artists that are interested in these conversations about communities, about educational platforms, about speaking to new audiences. And, the Biennale is unique. It is absolutely unique in the way in which it does that in Saudi, for the locals as well as for the internationals, because it's such a high quality platform. It's intellectual, on the highest levels, but also approachable. And, that's always a very difficult balance to make like intellectual enough for people who are experts. So like we want to present to Hans-Ulrich Oberst, but at the same time, accessible enough that, a 10-year-old kid can come and experience art for the first time and think that it's cool and interesting. So.
Yeah, and I think for me, I totally agree with you, especially with the idea of, bringing artists together from all around the world, especially with the local ones. So I think it's a kind of like a dialogue, between these kind of artists, and even for the audience who are attending or kind of visiting these kind of spaces, and how because our world is connected now, so whether especially virtually and with everything. So with the advent of the internet, and everything is, exposed from different kind of cultures that you couldn't imagine before, that you could know or learn or see these kind of information from other cultures. So I think for these kind of audience who kind of, live in a world at a time that you get to see this kind of, mixes, and, the idea of culture, that dialogue at the same place, and comparing, and kind of, being related to the art and the exact life. I don't know, but for me, I think it's more realistic experience than anything else, even though if you kind of, even when you're facing an objective art or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's, you have to think about all these levels of audience and engagement. And nothing is ever going to satisfy everyone, right? That's just an impossibility. But you have to do things like with quality. And so I think whenever, what I would never want to hear is like, oh, that was done badly.
Oh, okay.
And so for me, it's like, if you present something and do something of the utmost quality, people can then have their critiques of, concept, or, something didn't speak to them as much. And that's all valid because everyone has an opinion, and, you can't, in the art world, you can't be black and white about it. But at least we're presenting something of the highest quality. And I think that's, for me, has been an incredible thing to see. And, I just actually had a meeting literally just a couple of hours ago with the CEO of the Biennale Foundation. And I said, that's really what I've thought has distinguished, the Biennale in so many ways of what we see happen all around the world, not just in Saudi or not just in the Middle East. Certain things happen too quickly and they're not done, well, but they're good enough. But what the Biennale has done things excellently from one. And you've had now 3 editions. So 2 editions of the contemporary, one so far of Islamic, and then the next one opening in January. And I think it provided that platform. And I think, I had one kind of one of the most incredible, for me, like one of my heroes, who's come to Saudi now twice. And the first time, Maya Hoffman from Luma, she came with a completely open mind. And it was just really very special for me to be able to spend time with her and take her around. And then she said, I want to come back because I want to see if what I saw was real.
Oh, okay.
Something can happen once and be great. It can be like a fluke, or it can, just have happened. But for something to happen over and over, that's really, shows that it's real.
Exactly.
And real, that the quality is there. So I think that's been, that was very special for me.
Yeah. Do you think, are there, in your opinion, how have the recent culture initiatives in the Gulf area, such as the Sharjah Biennale and the Louvre at Abu Dhabi, impacted the art scene in Saudi Arabia? Because the Biennale at the Sharjah, it was before the Durya and the Islamic. I'm sure that there is some sort of influence maybe on the Saudi Biennales.
So actually, funnily enough, I just said this to Ayat this year. I said, without Sharjah, there wouldn't have been Durya. We need to give, kind of full respect and congratulations to Sheikh Ahur and her father for having started it, and then her for having kind of done this incredible job running it for these now 20 years or more. And she's somebody that I remember, kind of asking, I was like, please, when I was first starting off in the art world, like kind of thinking like the importance of key moments. And when we were actually starting our Dubai, how do we work with Sharjah? How do we time our Dubai, to be at that moment and bring people together? And I said, to the international art world, how do they perceive, Sharjah? And they said, for them, it was very important because it's a woman from the Middle East. And at the time, this was also 20 years ago, when also perceptions of women and women's roles in the Middle East was sadly, very ignorant of the way in which Western people viewed Arab women and their kind of place in society. And they said, and especially then what's incredible is not just she's a woman from the region, but like every 2 years, you're going to have a great Biennale. Maybe it's not going to be your favorite. Maybe you're going to have a critique, or maybe, you have like an intellectual critique. That's always variable. But, you're going to walk in to an incredibly intellectually stimulating Biennale, and that consistency and that, ability to count on something is so important. So I think, Khor has done an incredible job with the Biennale in that way, and really helping people feel more comfortable about Arabs. I've talked to many of my friends in the United States about, kind of what's happening. And we've had so many American visitors to Art Dubai, and they would come for Art Dubai and they'd go to Sharjah. And this was also at a time where people were like, I have a Jewish last name. Can I come to Dubai? Wear a skirt. Can I go to Dubai? And you're like, now, of course, we know Dubai is like completely, it's totally okay, all these things. But people were so nervous.
Exactly.
So Dubai and Sharjah allowed people to have this kind of level of hospitality. And of course, Arab hospitality being so generous and so welcoming, people felt more comfortable being able to travel to the Arab world. So those, I think, Art Dubai, of course, Sharjah before, but then especially hand in hand with Art Dubai, was really this opening up of the Arab world to so many. And now, what's happening in Saudi, is really, kind of the next step. Saudi is now opening to the world and wants to welcome people. And people still also have a reticence about going to Saudi, but going for things like the Biennale, they come in group trips, museum groups. I and like their host and make sure like they go to like, this, and I make sure it's not just all of the fancy things. I want them to go to the souk El Zel. I want them to go to the, the kind of local beach and see families having coffee. I want them to go to all of this stuff, and really experience, kind of normal Saudi society too. But then of course, like interact with like an intellectual and kind of a socioeconomic elite, because then they can speak their same language and explain to them what's happening in the country. And I think that's what's an important thing, is that having a platform and having a place where people can feel comfortable asking questions, hearing what things are like. And, there was a new article, a new book about the modern tourism, and that tourism is really, and that's including cultural tourism, which I'm like kind of the ultimate cultural tourist. I go to Naoshima, I go to Marfa, I go everywhere. Is that tourism, breaks down barriers more than anything else.
I totally agree. Yes. Amen for that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so funny, as you mentioned earlier, that the still the misconception of and the stereotypical images that circling around that we're still a close society, that we do this and that. Even I remember when I was studying in the States, and people still ask me whether you're still living in tents and you have a camel, and you go to school with a camel, and you have an oil well in the backyard. I think it's because of the media. And I don't blame them, actually, because media has a very huge influence on people, not for Saudis, but for every culture in the world. So going back to tourism, yes, I totally agree, because visiting this country and getting to know the people and the culture, and go and visit the old towns and the main areas and get to know the people, you would actually change your mind about this culture, and you're going to make your own conception about it. So yeah, so this is why sometimes I focus in my research about these kind of misconceptions, especially circulating around women. So speaking of women and women artists, whom do you think are kind of, the most prominent female artists, Saudi female artists, that besides Dana Wartani that you mentioned, who's taking maybe the lead, or kind of, caught your eyes on her work, and, kind of, put some sort of, or her work kind of touched your heart or something?
I mean, I think, for me, the kind of two women who I have spent the most time with and who have really, and I would say really changed my life, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Maha Malouh and Manal Doyan.
Oh, yeah.
And, Maha, and they're from kind of two generations. Like not that much difference between them, but there is a difference in the way in which they approach things. And so what I really appreciate is seeing that difference. And, Maha was the first Saudi artist collected at Tate, the first Saudi, or not just female, for Saudi in general, first Saudi artist shown in the Venice Biennale, and the main Biennale, with Christine Massel. So that was 6-8 years ago. And I'll never forget, I was with Maha. We happened to, we'd always been very friendly, and I always really admired and looked up to her. And we were in the hotel, and we happened to be in the same hotel by chance. That's where I spent for a year. And she was in the kitchen in the breakfast room. And I said, "Oh my gosh, Maha, like, congratulations. We're so excited. This is, it was the opening." And she introduced me to her husband, and I think it was one of her either her son. I can't remember if it was her son or her daughter, but I think it was her son, actually. And I said, "Oh, it's so wonderful you're here celebrating, your mother, your wife's incredible achievements." And she said, "Well, of course, I've been celebrating them and working for them my whole life. And now they can, be here for me. And not in an area, not in a like kind of a spicy, it was like just it was like, of course, your family's going to be here to celebrate you because you haven't had that yet. She had been a devoted wife and mother, for, years, decades. And now she was being celebrated, and it was wonderful. And her work really touches upon very serious subjects and, has really been a definitive kind of tome and work and series of research about like Islamic fundamentalism, about like these young men, especially who've been, brains have been warped by a completely, erroneous interpretation of religion, of society. And she really like focused on that. And I think that's incredible. And now more and more about like women's, like the role of women, of course, with like the work about like the kitchen pots.
Yeah, they're so amazing. I love them so
I know,
much.
beautiful. And then, I think she really has been that person. And I mean, when I take every time we go to Riyadh, I make sure I take people to her studio. And, she says that, for her, she thinks, Mohammed bin Salman has been somebody who has changed the role of women more than any other man in history. And somebody was like, wait, sorry, explain. Like, because of course for them, it didn't compute. It was a Western. And she repeated it. And she said, he has changed women's lives in this country more than any other man in history, except for, of course, the Prophet Muhammad. And for her, it was like, she told us, or like she couldn't take her daughter to like the hospital when she broke her arm, like, all these things that are just like basic, and she was so, emphatic about it and comes from a position of experience and knowledge, and really so important. And then you have somebody like Manal Doyan, who also was like a critic, like a deep critic of, of Saudi society, but from a place of love. And she always said, as being somebody who's a Saudi patriot, I know how to change things from within. And she didn't want to be somebody who was, banished or, but for her, it was like you push, there's like an English saying, it's like you do kind of push a cart. If you just keep your shoulder on it, you push something way more than shoving it, right? So there's like a better way of saying it, but you know what I mean? Just like these slow increments. Yeah. And Manal's work talking about women's rights and talking about women who like needed the permissions, the doves. I have one actually right here next to me. Her work was very much like, this is what we need to change. And so now her work, frankly, then turns on the West and says, look, we've changed. Like her work in Venice, incredible. Her work was like, Saudi women are liberated, but now the West just wants to tell us we're not. And it's all about the misconception, like all these ridiculous articles that come out and all these things. And you're like, no, actually.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I haven't met Maha before in my life in person, but I admire her. I love her work and her, kind of, the topics and issues that she's kind of, dealing with in her art. But for Manalia, we met a lot and we kind of, worked a lot in different kind of places and areas, and I love her and I adore her. I adore her work. I adore her bravery and kind of this kind of she has this kind of personality and opinion that she's really believing in, and she kind of defended so elegantly, her art. Yeah, I love them both. So from seeing the art scene and the artworks in the Saudi Arabia from in the past and in the recent kind of time, is there any kind of trends or movements that it's kind of trendy in the Saudi art scene that you kind of noticed that's maybe kind of similar to other countries or so?
I mean, you definitely See a lot of video art and photography. I think that's changing a little bit now as the scene has like the modern, like the contemporary scene, let's say, has matured a bit more. So you have artists like an Alia Ahmed, who's a painter in, let's say a more traditional art form, and very much a painter. But you see a lot of artists focusing on new media. And I think, that's also indicative of the fact that Saudi is such a young country, has some of the highest rates of usage of social media, and the internet has like the most access, like per capita, I think, of anywhere in the Middle East for the internet. So of course that would make sense then. So you see that more, but then you of course have like young painters. So like an Ali Ahmed, Latif Ajlan, who's Kuwaiti, but let's say part of that same generation. So there is a little bit of a look back to a traditional art form. And that's also perhaps driven by the market. I'm not so aware of how that works in that, because of course people like to buy paintings, it's like an easier thing to buy. But this idea of like residencies, I think people are so hungry to like create community. Like you see a lot of residencies being formed and artists like going through those residencies. And then they also have like day jobs. I was at the Ether Foundation residency in Jeddah in February, March, kind of during the Biennale opening. And so many of the artists, had other things that they were doing. One artist, she was like a banker, and then then her work really had to do with like monetary, kind of like the fiscal policy and things, so because that's like her day job, right? So that's what is part of her experience. So I think it's also related to whether or not people can make a living in the art world. And right now, I'm going to say it again, and I hope, maybe somebody out there is going to turn into a collector by hearing me say it.
Yeah.
Like enjoy art and culture without supporting it, and being a collector is a really easy way. And you don't need to have tons of money. You don't need to be, somebody of great wealth. You can like buy something for a few $100s, a few thousand, and then ask for a payment plan. I'll pay you X amount every month. Galleries are totally okay with that. And they love engaging with new people. So, if you love art and culture and you want it in your country and in your society, you need to support it.
Exactly. Yeah. Mental and kind of, emotional, emotional support and kind of, economical support and financial support. Yes, I think that this subject is also, common in every kind of, place in the world, that artists are still striving and to make a living. So that's why they have a day job. And then after finishing work, they're so happy to, pursue their career until they become an established artist. And this way they wanted to dedicate their time to creating art. So I think we have one more one more question to answer. Do you think that society, because I'm comparing this kind of thing to the other parts of the world, do you think that Saudi art society needs more art critics to support, to lead, to guide, to kind of, explain the art scene and the artworks to the general public, or it doesn't have this kind of, role in society, especially nowadays, or something?
I think the idea of engagement in general, I think, we need more, and I say we, like in Saudi, in the kind of context of being somebody who's been super involved there, but just in general, really in the Middle East, people engaged in art and culture. And I think more art critics, more people who read and intellectually engage. Not everybody needs to be a curator. Not everybody needs to be an artist. Right. And that's one of the first talks I ever did in Saudi was at Ahmed Matar's studio. I think it was like 2008 or something. And there were, all these people who came. It was when things were still very underground, and we had only advertised on Facebook, and it was a mixed group, and it was, it was not public and not easy. But there were like a lot of young women came with their fathers. A lot of people came with like kind of in couples, and they all like wanted to be engaged in the arts. And they were like, okay, how do we become an artist? I'm like, you don't all need to be artists. You just need to, in the art world, maybe work at a gallery, start a gallery, maybe you need to be, start a storage company, start an art handler company, start a framing company. It doesn't, not everybody has to be in the same prescribed roles. And yeah, so I see that we have a comment from Lina Kattan that about the art industry is built on connections, engagement with other artists. Absolutely. So like kind of finding your community. And Ahmed Mata always has an open house, kind of open studio policy. People go and sit and hang out. Artists get to meet each other. Athar Gallery in Jeddah was very much that in its early stages. It was, I always tell them they were technically for profit, but basically nonprofit because they just used to be like a home for everyone all the time. Sadly agrees with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's like, it is about creating community and not just about artists, but about everybody that is a part of that ecosystem. Artists, of course, are at the core, but you have like everyone else that plays into the ecosystem and is part of that ecosystem.
Yes, totally agree. Well, I think our time is up. So I'm gonna wrap with another kind of a paragraph statement just to wrap up what we kind of discussed in this kind of session. So the art scene in Saudi Arabia has undergone a remarkable transformation, especially in the recent years. So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has now embraced the vibrant and diverse artistic expressions, especially from a new generation of artists, from this kind of stunning calligraphy that we see, and the traditional arts that kind of jumping in or kind of emerging in the art galleries that there have been long celebrated, and we finally get to see them within the context of the contemporary art. So Saudi Arabia is craving now its unique place in the global artistic stage. Thank you, Princess Alia, for this kind of delightful and fruitful conversation. And I wish that we have more time to discuss it, and maybe the next time in person.
Yes.
We can sit together and we have this kind of long, extensive talk about art and everything in general. And I'm looking ahead to have some more kind of participation in this kind of art talks. Thank you, Helena, for having us here in this kind of marvelous platform. And I thank our audience for listening. And I think I'm not sure if I see the question and answer chat, but let me put my glasses on to see.
May I ask one question if there is time for that? Because I'm really deeply honored to have you both here. But one specific sentence catch my. What about art critics in Saudi? I mean, for the contemporary art. When we talk about the contemporary art, we need to have a structural art critics. There is a problem all over the world, not only in Saudi Arabia. For example, in this part of Western Balkan or Southern Europe, we used to have a very structural art critics, but we don't have it anymore, unfortunately.
I mean, problem, and I mean, that's a problem, I think, like you said, all over the world. But I think acutely in Saudi and in the Middle East, there's not so much of a culture of like online or let's say journalistic critique. You don't have the equivalent of like art review or these kinds of things. I mean, you have more and more some really great writers who are engaging. So you have like a Rebecca Proctor, who of course it was author of my book. You have Nadine Khalil. You have Rahel, who's also with like kind of Freeze in different magazines. So you have more and more that you're seeing that engage with the Western publications, but it hasn't been so much a part of Arab education. And I think Lina you can perhaps speak more to that in terms of the education system, is that it was so much more based on memorization rather than critical thinking. And I think that's also been a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because in the line with the art education, so the idea of implementing art criticism and extensive kind of study of art history, it's not that well accepted because of the kind of the career kind of thing afterwards. So if I know that there's no kind of career or kind of opening positions for me in the future, that I can be an art critic or an art historian, so I'm not going to go there to study this kind of major. But I think, yeah, we need in the Arabian kind of countries that more art critics, just to explain for example, the bare minimum, to explain the art scene, the artworks, that everything that we see around us, and let us, appreciate this kind of, art and how to perceive it. And sometimes they kind of, open the way for the new generation to relate with the art. So yeah, I think we need this to push it more in the country. And some other parts in me believe that maybe because I'm not sure, but kind of, it's my opinion, sometimes we don't accept criticism as we could be. Yes, so especially artists. And because you have to have this kind of culture and kind of mentality to accept and the opinions of others, and others have to give you a constructive criticism at the same time. So the idea of accepting this kind of I think it's
mean hatred, or criticism doesn't mean
exactly
right? Criticism means, okay, I like the color of your nails, but it's not my favorite. And you could, maybe you could have done this differently. It doesn't have to be just all bad. It's just about like giving a critique. No, I agree with you.
Or to push maybe forward somebody to understand where it's now and how to move forward in order to involve within their own framework. And it's very important that, for example, I'm talking as a comparison between this part of the world and Saudi Arabia. It's very similar. It's very, very similar, believe it or not, because we have art history, and generally art in this part of Europe are female job. Believe it or not.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah. And if, for example, that in the university I teach in, we don't have a boys' campus for art education. No, it's only dedicated to women. So because I think in the society, or kind of, this kind of, area in the world, that I think they believe that art is more related to females than males. And if you're a male, you can practice art on your spare time, but it shouldn't be your main profession, because you have to provide for your family. So you have to have a job. So as we know that sometimes art doesn't pay that much. So yeah, especially for male artists. Yeah, but now I think in the kingdom, which is, it's so promising that we are seeing so many kind of, universities that kind of opening up the art departments for art education, for especially for males, and the acceptance there is so high, which is kind of so promising, and giving you an idea that yes, they long waited for this to happen, and finally it's there.
I think so. We have one. How has the cultural and economic landscape in Saudi Arabia evolved to support and promote contemporary art? What are the key initiatives or policies driving this transformation? I mean, so the evolution is like immediate. The evolution is that there was a Vision 2030, there was a Ministry of Culture created, there was the Royal Commission of Al-Hada created, the RCU. So those were, you know, the kind of in immediate evolution, but actually revolution that happened in an incredible way. And, you know, contemporary art is at the core. So it's written into the new country vision. And then the key initiatives and policies, again, Vision 2030, but then kind of when you look deeper into it, of course, you have the Ministry of Culture, you have the Royal Commission of Al-Hada, you have the Royal Commission of Riyadh City. And then underneath those, you have like within Jeddah Heritage, which is more or less under the Ministry of Culture. So I welcome you to read the book. Rebecca has done an incredible job of writing about each one of these initiatives. I mean, of course, very briefly, because the book it's like prescribed to be very, very short. But those are really the key things and the key governmental organizations that are driving that. And then beyond that, private initiatives. So originally you had Edge of Arabia. You then have the Saudi Art Council. You have Athar Gallery and Athar Foundation, which are, you know, for me, I think really the kind of key, and the Jamil family. Sorry to not have said, I mean, really, they were there from day one with Edge of Arabia, actually, as helping support Edge of Arabia from its early stages, and then now have Jamil Art Center in Dubai and Hay in Jeddah, and really kind of a big part of what's happening in the contemporary art world.
Exactly.
And I think we have a question from Ali.
Alif, you may unmute yourself. Okay.
Thank you, Yelena, very much. And I wanted to greet you from my garden because, you know, it's very nice and you're very welcome. If you want to come here, it's your house for everyone here. It's an open invitation. It was an honor to meet you and listen to you. Sometimes tears in my eyes because, you know, my name is Elif. I'm a Muslim. I'm living in Turkey, and as Yelena says, believe it or not, it's not very different from what you say. So you're a revolutionary. You are making a renaissance in the Islamic culture. It's not only art what you're doing, it's a pioneer job, and it's very difficult. But it's a challenge. How do you say that? I don't know. It's nice to be in the front line, always, trust me. And Dr. Lina Kattan is, I mean, teaching at the university and, you know, advocating things, you know, organizing things. It's a great job for the next generations. And Princess, you're doing an amazing job. I'm half American. That's why maybe I'm a little bit saved in terms of this only Islamic, you know, prejudgment, let's say. As you say, there's a prejudgment. And like your colleague, Maya Hoffman, she was asking you whether she can come over there. We all are faced with such prejudgments. As a Turk speaking 5 languages, you know, I always found myself, no matter what I do, business or international politics, which I have double major in both. And I find myself defending my position, and we shouldn't do it. Or I have a granddaughter, she should not do it anymore. Okay, that's why your job is very, very valuable for me. Believe me, I had tears in my eyes. And it's so nice to hear those words from a young person like you, Princess, and from you, Dr. Kattan. Thank you, Yelena, for, you know, and how do you see the future? I mean, you told something, but is there more and more your plans? Maybe if you do want to do anything in Turkey with Yelena and me, I'm at your service. I'd like to say that. Is there anything we could do more? I mean, anything you want from us. I mean, please, if you have something in your mind or in the next weeks, please feel free to tell.
Thank you.
Just a second to explain something. My friend Alif, she has master's in economics. You know that, and she's economic, and she's very, very good in businesses. That is why I want. She's not an artist or art historian.
I used to make theater. Maybe if you count it as an art, or I am a writer, maybe that's an art. But I'm not an historian, as Yelena says.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Gadir wants to say something. Is it okay to unmute him, Yelena?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yes, I just wanted to thank everyone here, and especially Princess Alia and my friend, Dr. Lina. And I just wanted to say, when I have the book with me, and I read it, and I'm doing my PhD here, and I'm writing about the art scene in Saudi Arabia, especially. That's the recent changes. I would like to maybe do an interview with Princess Alia if she's okay later, and get in touch with her, because your book, I was writing my pieces since 2021, and when this book came up, I felt like I did the right things, because there is lots of things I wrote that agree with what you did, and also have some points we need to discuss with you later, just to make sure that I understand. I'm writing exactly what's happening, and that's what I wanted to say.
I just email in the group chat, and you can email me, and I'm happy to also connect you to Rebecca, who
That's good.
a lot of yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. She's writing her dissertation is about the same kind of, idea of the book. So once she kind of, she sent me a picture of the book, I think a year ago or something, or a month ago. Yeah. And
once it's released.
Yeah, I was so busy. I didn't kind of, order it as soon as I used to be ordering books. But when Sarah kind of introduced the book to me, I sent her the book, and she told me, yeah, I told you about the book, and we have a great discussion about it. And I think it was, published in a very kind of, a crucial time, and we actually need more books and more publications about this kind of topic, because yes, we need more research, whether about the past and the history of art in Saudi Arabia, and the upcoming future of the art scene, and how it's going to be presented to the global art world.
Mm. That's wonderful. Well, I'm super happy to hear from a new scholar, and I'm sure yours, I always say my PhD is completely obsolete. First of all, doing my PhD was the worst experience of my life. I love my advisor. He was amazing. Oh my God, just doing it was so not fun. But then it was like everything changed. So she's like completely, completely irrelevant. So
yeah, but you documented a very good, part of history. That's it's changed, but you documented it, which is so great that we have it here now.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, lovely to meet you all.
No, same here. All right, I think we're done here. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for the audience. Thank you, Ghadir, Helena, Elif, right? I'm not sure about. Yeah, I'm half Turkish, so my mother's Turkish, so I'm related to it. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for having us. It was so lovely, and yeah, next time maybe we're gonna all meet in person. You never know. Yes.
You never know.
In Jeddah.
Maybe in Jeddah, yeah. Well, yeah.
Or maybe in Turkey, or kind of
maybe in Turkey. In Belgrade as well. You're very welcome to come. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.